lecture. I'm not here to tell you best career practices or how to think about your resume or how to think about any of those pieces. I'm here to tell you what it's actually like in the industry when you make it out of college. I work in advertising, what we would generally call the creative industry. It includes sales, marketing, media, advertising, branding, all of these different pieces. And what we do is we help tell stories around businesses, products, and that's how products get sold. Our field is extremely underrepresented. And for people who are usually buying these products, you would think that we're really involved in how they get communicated. But in actuality, only 7.2% of marketers and creative people identify as Black. Which means that when you leave Grambling, you're going to enter into a world where you are probably going to be one of the only people in the room who looks like you, who talks like you, who has the same values that you do. And if you aren't prepared for that, if you come in expecting the camaraderie that you've built at Grambling, then we can be in a really tough situation. Now, I'm not saying this to cause panic. I get it. Right? You've built the relationships you've had here, you've been hustling, you've been grinding, and all of that's extremely important. And it's actually what you've done outside of the classroom that's gonna make it so you can survive this statistic. So bear with me, we're gonna have some fun, but the first thing we gotta talk about is code switching. Have you ever changed the way you talk in a room? If you have, you mind raising your hand? That's funny, who would have thought, right? Every time we go someplace, we have to think about how we're going to present ourselves. What are some of the factors that play in when you are wondering, how am I going to show up? What are you thinking about? What's making those decisions for you?
Nationality of the people.
Nationality of the people.
What kind of decisions they can make.
What kind of decisions these people are going to make.
What am I there for?
What's my purpose there? You know, when we look at this situation, code switching really comes down to, hi, come on in. Oh, thanks. No, you're good, bro. Come on in. So when we talk about code switching, there are a couple of things that consistently pop up, right, that we are thinking about unconsciously. I'm not saying you ask these questions every single time you open your mouth, but you are answering them. And you know you are, because these are the things that we think through. The first question, who's going to be there? Who am I talking to? What kind of place is this? Is this a lecture? Is it a yard party? Right? Because the same people in two different contexts changes how we're going to talk. Why am I there? Why are they there? Are we there for the same reasons? Am I going to have to finagle something, hustle something out? And where is this happening? Not just what kind of place it is, but literally, where is this taking place? You know, I've gotten to do some meetings with some really cool guys over the period of time, and every single time the context is different. I remember going to New York a couple years back, and I was working on an Adidas project. And so we got to go to the unlisted headquarters for Adidas in New York. It's their fashion headquarters. You walk in, you immediately can tell this is not a place for everybody else. It's bare bones, neon lights, it's highly creative. Everybody's walking around in Adidas gear, right? It's just like the memo is there. And everyone's talking like designers, because this is the fashion building. And so as I'm there and I'm trying to do my presentation, I realize I can't talk like a marketer, like someone who understands advertising, because these guys don't care about that. What they care about is good process. What they care about is how I arrived at the situation, not just if the situation is sexy. And so while I'm there and I'm trying to win this contract, I have to change how I talk. Did I win? Yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm here. But we have to do this every single time. And a lot of times it seems like an exhausting thing. I get it, you know, having to code switch between corporate America, between your white voice, between your Black family voice, and between whatever voice you talk in your sleep in, right? We all bounce between these as contexts, and it can feel like a burden and that it's exhausting. And I wish I could tell you as a professional that you're going to enter a world where you don't have to, but it's not the case. Our whole job in marketing is to communicate according to context. Our whole job in creative spaces is to create stories that resonate for the people in the room. We're always looking at this. We're always thinking this, even if we never say it. And so that puts you in an interesting situation, because as Black folk, we code switch all the time. We've actually been code switching longer than Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours. We're experts in code switching. But they won't tell you that's a business skill. They won't tell you how this is going to play out in your career, but then they expect you to succeed when only 7% of us are in the race. This is our superpower. And as black folk, we have many of them. When we see ads like this was from Area a while back, right? They had this creative push during the body positivity movement where they were like, hey, we're no longer going to do photoshopping our models. We're going to make sure we show real women. We're going to show real models. We're going to make sure that they feel that we're being as authentic as possible. Now, Aerie got acquired by American Eagle, right? Same holding company at this point. And of course, you know American Eagle because they just did this ad. Same company, same thing. We're still talking fashion. We're still talking how we show up with fashion. But I want to tell you that when this ad was created, there was a person in the room who got to write this text. They actually wrote plenty of versions of this, maybe 20, 30, if they were taking it really seriously and they had the money for it, maybe even 100 versions of this. And then there was another person who looked at it and decided which one. And they weren't thinking about us. They weren't thinking about the context. They were thinking about them. They weren't code switching based off of who their audience was. They're not asking, well, who actually buys our jeans? Do they feel this way? This is the same question as we ask coming into a room. How am I going to show up? No one's asking that question when this ad gets run. You want to know how I know? It's because after this ad popped up, we didn't see an immediate press strategy. We didn't see a press release. We didn't see any kind of immediate pickup. What we saw was quiet. And then we heard a very quiet double down where they said, hey, we kind of like our ad. We paid for it. But they're backed into a corner. Now, this may just seem like an ad, but if you work in business, if you're going to enter any form of marketing, this is where the majority of your money goes. Outside of building the product, outside of building the business. So you have to get this right. And a lot of times we don't think about it because it seems so seamless, right? But how are you going to speak to black folk if black people aren't in the room creating the pieces? Not just shooting them, not just owning the social media account, but writing the text, or what we call copy, or creating the visual, what we call creative, has to be us. And the cool thing is I'm not just saying this from a wish it could be us. But when we have examples of when it is us, we do amazing things. This was a Martha's Vineyard campaign that happened through Ralph Lauren. Now, you may heard about Martha's Vineyard, but it's where black wealth has historically gone for summer vacations. We're talking about for decades. This was our place, this was our haven. So when Ralph Lauren is looking at a campaign, they didn't come up with the idea of Martha's Vineyard, right? They didn't come up with the concept that we go there. What happens is someone, like many of the students here today, said, well, your target demographic, the people who buy your jeans, the people who have the money, go to Martha's Vineyard. We don't have to come up with a new story. All we have to do is speak to them in their language. All we have to do is a little bit of code switching. We just have to ask the questions. What's going to speak for our people? What's going to speak for the people in the room? And when we ask that, this campaign does numbers. And we're not talking like my rent money numbers. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars resting on your brilliance. Because it's the decisions that you make as a creative person, as a business owner, as a marketer, as an advertiser, that keeps this from being anything else than what it is. They would not have thought of this idea unless someone put them on to what black luxury and wealth looked like in the 60s and 70s. During a time where the institutions told us that we couldn't be wealthy. I can guarantee you there was no white executive at Ralph Lauren that was like, guys, I have an idea. But these are the campaigns that matter. All of this comes down to what I'm talking about is this thing of cultural intelligence. You have this innate ability because we've been in rooms that were not designed for us. So now we read those rooms. And the more rooms that you're in, the more of an instinct it becomes. You can call it survivor trauma, you can call it superpower, but at the end of the day, it's what makes us partially who we are. Is that when we step into a space, We're going to look at the atmosphere first. In marketing, we do that every single day. And in fact, I'll talk to agencies and they'll tell me we're hiring strategists that are making 6 figures and they don't know what vibes and what doesn't. And we don't know how to train them. We don't know how to teach them how to do this. We don't know how to teach them to make one of these campaigns. They're still stuck repeating this. And the funny thing is, the way you're tired of this ad, is the way clients are tired of these ads, is the way companies are tired of these ads. What they want are campaigns like this. Campaigns that are smooth, what we call sexy, right? That just rolls through, doesn't cause any problems, has a lot of purchases, and even highlights a story along the way. This is our job in the creative space, is to highlight these pieces. But if we speak, or if we're not allowed to speak, on our understanding of the room, of our understanding of the atmosphere, then these campaigns don't happen. And our story gets cut from the record. At the end of the day, when we talk about cultural intelligence, it plays out in every single creative and business form that you can think of. When we're talking advertising, we're really fighting for attention, right? We're creating a moment that gets people hyped. If you're at LSU, you might listen to Neck. Right? There are things that we can do that disrupt the moment and grab everybody's attention. That's advertising. Branding is about trust, creating an experience where people can continue to show up and believe that you will do what you said you will. We understand follow through. We understand the dude who always commits and doesn't deliver. He has a bad brand. Marketing is about existence. Do you even show up? Are you in class? Do we know who you are? And are you showing up in all the places that matters? Every single one of these requires you knowing the room that you are stepping into, the voice that you bring with you, and the positive and negative benefits that happen with being a person of color or a marginalized voice in that room. Because the reality is, people are learning there are a lot more marginalized voices than they originally thought. And so you can't ask the majority voice to speak for us. So they're looking for us to teach them how to listen to us. And in every single one of these spaces, there is going to be a black or brown marketer or business person who is being counted on, not just because of their degree, not just because of what they got in a textbook format, but because of what they literally bring in by showing up because they are people of color, because they have had to pay attention to the environment. They have to pay attention to the atmosphere. This is where we shine the best, because whether we're trying to get someone to buy DVDs at the barbershop or we're trying to sell a 10-figure dollar software, it comes down to relationships. It comes down to how we show up. It comes down to how we talk. It comes down to what we do afterwards. And this is where we shine. Our culture has embodied this in us. It's why we have HBCUs. It's because we understood that the textbook wasn't enough. When we look at things, we can break this down really easily between what I call signal and noise, right? Someone who, talks out the side of their neck and doesn't do anything, that's noise. Right? We deal with that. You've dealt with that. You know somebody, hell, they may be in this room, right? That leaves you guessing or confused. And you're like, that didn't help. I asked for your feedback, but what you gave me didn't do that. Maybe you have a professor who sends you feedback, but it's not actionable. Signal versus noise is what we deal with all the time. Now, we call this being real, right? We keep it 100, we keep it $1, and that's what this side looks like. But these skills, the difference are these things that consistently heads of companies are looking for in an upset they can't find. We have people all the time who say, I wish my strategist, I wish my marketer was more empathetic. I wish they could follow through faster and make it through the research. But they don't know what they're looking for. They don't know how to find it. They don't know what the good is. Us, we know what a vibe is. Shoot, we've created vibes with 2 pencils on a desk. It doesn't take much, but it's something that has been part of our culture for such a long time that they don't even know what to look for. And this is what I mean by being our secret sauce, because they're asking for it. Let me show you. This is a real job from Empire Records in San Francisco, California. This is an entry-level position that starts off paying $69,000 a year, goes up to $80,000. Because you're smart, you're always going to go for the maximum amount of salary given. So we're saying $80K. Let's look at some of these requirements and some of these things that are expected. So the first one, assist with administrative duties. Yeah, you got to be able to use Word, Google Docs. Got to be able to fill in forms. Can you run a digital campaign? Can you use a simple formula? Can you use ChatGPT? Can you use a dashboard? All of these things here can be learned from YouTube. And let me be real with you. Whoa, don't do that. Get out of here. Not in session. Cool. You'll learn all of these things online. In fact, most of us in the industry learn all of these things online, right? There are amount of times where a client says, hey, have you used Asana? And I'm like, I use every other project management system but Asana. I think I can figure it out. But if I tell them that, they're not going to hire me. So I have to say, yeah, of course, right? Once you start doing ad campaigns, you'll learn that Google ads, Facebook ads, TikTok ads, programmatic ads, OTT ads, radio ads, they all work the exact same. So then what's the skill? Well, it's nothing there. Let's see if it's down here, notes for success. Okay, you have to know about music. There's that administrative skill again, so I guess you really got to know Google Docs, but interpersonal and communication skills. Understand the importance of confidentiality and discretion. Can you keep your mouth shut? All of these are still basic things. So what makes this job worth $80K a year? Well, there's nothing that's listed here. Right? This is standard stuff. If you understand Spotify and Apple Music and you know who Bad Bunny is, you know the music industry. Congratulations. Where's the difficulty? Well, the difficulty is in the things they didn't tell you. See, what they said is administrative duties. But what they want you to be able to do is read the room immediately, whether it's online or not. They want you to be able to lick your finger, put it in the air, and tell us which direction the wind is coming. And yeah, they want you to be able to write that down. Right? They may say, well, we want you to do ad campaigns and setups. That's easy. The question is, what campaign do we run on what day? And that's not decided by the platform. That's decided by whatever is happening in our lives. Right? So when a threat goes out to HBCUs, if there are ads that we're running that have something to do with it, it's not going to come from the heads up who say, hey guys, how's everybody doing? Let's just talk about the situation. It's going to be one of you in your first couple of years in the work who are going to have to say, hey, the news says this, so we need to stop this ad. We need to cancel this because it's so executional. It's so on the front lines. And here's the thing. They're going to demand that you know how to do that. They're going to punish you when you don't do it, and they're not going to pay you when you do it right. Because it's not on the job description. We've got dashboards. Come on in. We got dashboards and reporting tools. All those are simple plugins. They're simple things. Yes, it seems complicated right now because you may not have used a lot of dashboards, but I promise you, one dashboard is like another dashboard, and once you use one of them, you've used them all. But the thing that matters most is learning how to take your friend who raps in a closet and turn him into a person who can build global hype. That is not taught in the textbook. That is something that you know how to do because you've been doing it. You've been running hustles since you started at this school. I remember being in college, you won't believe it, but I was doing lineups. All right, I was cutting people's hair. There's a level of grind that goes into these things, and I had to do that to pay for my books, to pay for my supplies as a design student, but that was the reality of the situation. You may have had a job, but you've had to juggle all these things regardless of what you've done. If you've been a part of a club, if you've led a movement on campus, if you've taken a part in a march, any of those things require you understanding how to spot early signals of issues before they become big things. You have to know when you're at a house party when things are going to go left. And you better know as soon as possible. We do this. We do this all the time. In fact, this is the most important part of your college education is what you have learned in being able to do these things. But it's not going to be on your degree. It's not going to be in the language because the industry and our economy doesn't value that on the surface. But it's why they keep us in the room. When we're not in the room, this happens. This is a real ad. It's a $350 million campaign. Can you imagine no one caught this? No one said, yo, that's bad. Like, that just looks crazy, period. Much less without all of the racial informed messaging that's happening in this piece. You mean to tell me that y'all let this slide by and so it ended up on a billboard outside of my home and my cousins can see it on their way to school? And we go, well, how did that happen? I'm telling you how it happened. Because you weren't there. Because they haven't wanted you there. Except for right now, they need you there. Because they're going to keep doing stuff like this. Even Apple is going to do stuff like this. They're going to launch ads that are spending so much money. And when things go left, they don't just stop the ad, y'all. They have to pull it. They've got to call the people who they've given the ad to. They've got to break relationships. They've got to go back and say, yo, you can't talk about that anymore, which means that lawyers have to get involved. Press has to get involved, all because somebody couldn't take a look at a video and say, yo, this is whack. It's the simplest thing. Hundreds of millions of dollars. And they know they need this. I was talking to an agency last week, and she said, I don't know how we're going to train our strategists to not do this. And I'm like, well, have you been to Grambling? Have you been to Morehouse? Have you been to Spelman? Have you been to Clark? Because what I've seen is that we run this every single day. From professional dress Wednesdays and Thursdays to how we show up in class, how we answer questions, how we run clubs. All of those pieces we've been doing because we understand what's at stake when we don't. And for the first time, an industry is completely catching up to where we've been for decades. And so I want you to take advantage of it. I want you to run this game because they're going to keep doing this as long as they don't call us, and they're starting to call us. 5 years ago, it was 4% of us in the creative field. Now it's 7.2. That's a flood comparatively to what usually happens. We know this hustle. I talked about it when I was cutting hair. We understand when you have something, you have to think about who it's going to, and that's the first piece, right? If I can cut your hair, I can cut your hair, I can cut your hair, cool. Then we worry about scaling it up. Then we make it bigger. And we think about this every single time. I haven't seen a single black professional not run this at some point, whether they were 10, 11, 12, 18, 19, 55. This is how we move. Now, when you go to school, you're going to learn a really complicated way to look at all of this. And you should know it because that's jargon and that's language, and language is important. But at the end of the day, you've got to remember the same thing I'm telling you right now is that you already know how to do this. You're just catching up on language. But the core piece of knowing who is this for, right? When I'm throwing a yard party, I'm not inviting everybody. It's a yard party. I know who I want there. What's the movement that's happening around this? I know if it's going to be sunny. I know if it's going to be raining. I know exactly how the campus is feeling right now because I walk the campus every single day. And what change are you trying to cause? I'm trying to get people lit. Very easy answer. But we answer those questions every time. And you will go through so many workshops where they just try to get you to understand this. And your jobs will pay thousands of dollars to make sure you understand this. They won't give it to you because they don't think you know it. But they'll pay money to make sure you do. So where does that leave us? It leaves us in a place of power. We have a skill set that's highly in demand. Understanding how to navigate any room that we walk into, even if that room doesn't want us there, because those are the rooms that we walk into bravely every single day. What we have to do now is start claiming it. We have to start using language like cultural intelligence, like segmentation, because that's the words they use when they write contracts. That's the words they use when they're talking about the job. Right now, it's a vibe. They don't have to accredit a vibe. But when we talk about everything that goes into one, what it takes to get the people together, to get people moving, that's where we make our sauce. That's what we do. Because if they don't name what we do, then we're going to consistently be invisible. We're going to get tired, we're going to get burned out, and we're not going to want to do this work. And they're going to keep mocking us, and they're going to keep exploiting our culture. Is there money behind our ideas? Usually, but it's not reflected on our paycheck. Is there a way that they'll measure it? Not if there's no accountability. What's happening right now is they know they need something from us, and they're hoping we don't have the words to say. They're hoping that for 1 second that you can come in and be an ignorant black college student and not know what the job requires, and then mysteriously and magically succeed. So that they can say, well, you started here, we taught you. I'm here to tell you, you already have that innate skill set. What you have to do, what you need to do, what we have to do to survive is play their little game when it comes to language. We have to be able to say, no, I don't just know how to throw parties, I actually do event planning. Yes, I've run businesses before. They don't need to know I was out of your dorm room. A hustle is a hustle. Understanding audience development, marketing, whether that's you doing the social media on your phone, setting up a flyer in Canva and hanging it around campus, that's guerrilla marketing, y'all. That's organic marketing. These are pieces that billion-dollar companies rely on to get off the ground, and you know it naturally. And so when we have this language, then we can start naming things. We can start claiming what we do. We can make sure to build from it. The same reason I'm here right now is to make sure that you can start thinking about this, because you can go find the language. You can ask, what's corporate speak for developing an audience or segmentation? Or you can look in the back of your business book and look at the glossary. But I'm gonna tell you right now that you're not looking for a skill. You're looking to translate what you already know. And if you do that, we're unstoppable. And the industry is finally catching up. So take advantage. Dive in deep. Let me know if you have any questions.